Welcome to Leaders with Heart. I'm your host, Paddy McDonald, and today we're speaking with Luke Balcke, known as the No Bullshit Astrologer. Now, what does astrology have to do with leadership and business, you may ask? And I personally have had my own healthy skepticism around the validity of this particular modality. And going into this conversation, there was a sense of curiosity about how this could have some truth and also some serious doubts. And what I will say is that through holding an open mind and through allowing the differences in opinion to be there, but not shutting down in the face of those differences of opinion, what I was able to extract was a deep level of wisdom that has been built upon thousands of years of our ancestors studying the sky and noticing patterns in how we as humans show up in the various seasons of life. And so through this pattern recognition, through this application of thousands of years of myth and understanding of nature, it's really interesting to me how we can then align our own life to those patterns and those cycles. And so, do I believe everything that was said in this conversation? Not necessarily. But do I see some profound wisdom and application to my life? 100%. So I'm really grateful for this conversation with Luke. I hope you are able to gain what you need from this conversation as well. And also want to give you a language warning because Luke does like to drop the odd word or two. So enjoy the conversation, reach out with any questions or any comments, and we'd love to hear from you. Take care. So today we're joined by Luke Balcke, and I'm super excited to get into this conversation because Luke and I had an amazing chat about a week or so back. And for me, astrology is something that I'd previously had some curiosity around, but also had like a pretty large amount of skepticism around how real it was. And I kind of felt like, maybe there was some benefit if I believed in it enough, but also was like, yeah, well, we'll see. And I kind of followed the threads and just ended up in this conversation with Luke. And without really giving much of my story, I was blown away by how much Luke was able to tell me about myself and where I was at in life, and then give me actual practical tools for how to navigate the next year ahead in a way that just felt so true. And the logic behind the suggestions as well, I'm starting to understand a little bit more, but I'm still at the very beginning of my journey. So I'm really excited to have Luke on to shed a bit more light in a way that he describes as no bullshit astrology, which I love. So Luke, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Mate, thanks for having me. Pleasure to have this chat with you. So yeah, really appreciate it, mate. And hopefully we can crack a few minds and bring a little bit of anti-skepticism to the forefront.
Amazing.
I'll start by saying, mate, I wasn't always this fucking weird. I was a pest controller for 20 years of my life. I just was, when 9/11 happened in 2001. I was like, let's go to fucking get him. Like, come on, America. That's where I was at. So, and at that point, all I knew about myself was I was a Virgo and I had some Virgo traits. That was it. That was the level of my awareness. So, if I can go from pest control to a professional astrologer and past life regressionist and an energy clearer and healer, then I think that we can help people sort of put at ease their skepticism when it comes to this sort of stuff, for sure.
Yeah, amazing, man. And it's a great point you make there because, ultimately, my hope for this episode today is that people just come with an open mind and no one has to take any of this on, but just try it on, maybe, and see if it works. And
100%.
As you said, you had a different life before this and you were an entrepreneur, had your own business, and then life kind of took a different turn, and it was amazing to hear some of your story before this. I was actually wishing we were recording it because it's pretty wild, some of the twists and turns that came up for you. But I'd just love to hear kind of like how you got onto this path of connecting with astrology, and also like how you how you came to trust in this path.
Yeah, yeah. I came to this path by a pathway of unhappiness in the life that I'd created for myself, but not knowing why. I always was an inquisitive kid. I always wanted to know why. You know, if mum and dad, if I asked a question and they gave me an answer, I always ask why, like why. So, and I wasn't satisfied with just the basic, but just that's the way it is. I was like, yeah, but why is it like that? You know. And maybe that aspect of me got beaten out of me in school to a degree by the system. And I stopped sort of questioning things and just towed the line and went along with the conditioning and ticked the boxes until I got to a point again where I was like, well, I've got all the things that are supposed to make me happy, but I wasn't happy. And that came at a point in my life when I was really starting to go, well, what is the purpose of all this? Right? Beyond just the shit that I have and I own and I have and acquired and achieved and successes. And, you know, I had a pest control business and I was very successful at that, made a lot of money and I had a very good reputation and I was very well respected in the industry. Um, I was unfulfilled. So my gateway drug to spirituality was a 9/11 conspiracy video, and that led me down the rabbit hole 2014, 2015 in a big, big way. And once you start questioning the narrative and the story and the conditioning that we've been told about this world and what's happening and how it's happening, once you question one fundamental thing, and for everyone it can't be different. For a lot of people, it's health and nutrition. You know, they work out, hang on, the health system, the nutrition, like, you know, that whole corporatization of production of food and stuff. So it's different for everyone. But once you do the one, like, breakdown of, like, hang on a second, there's something going on here. We're not told the whole story. Why? So then for me, it's like, well, why? If 9/11 wasn't the way it's, you know, was supposed to have gone out, why? Why would they do that? And it just, that why question just keeps you going and digging and digging and digging. And through a year of no alcohol and very clear minded and a lot of health and, you know, personal sort of clarity that I had, I came across spirituality and religion and philosophy and astrology and all sorts of things and started looking into it for myself to satisfy my own curiosity. And I remember there was a guy on the internet. He's still on the internet now. He's an Australian guy. He's very well known in the conspiracy sort of realm of, you know, astrotheology, and his name's Santos Bonacci. And he had a lot of videos talking about astrology and spirituality and religion and tying them all in together. And he sort of expressed how the Bible was a story written in mythology about the movement of the stars. So I started to think, well, okay, like what's in this astrology stuff? Like, come on, and if religion's talking about mythology of the stars, then I want to know about what the stars have to say about me. So up until that point, I'm a Virgo, and I got some Virgo traits. But I look in the magazine and the newspaper, and I see the, you know, the generic sort of interpretations, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. Maybe it's me. Maybe it isn't. Whatever. Then I looked at, you know, in-depth natal chart, birth chart astrology to the degree of like, okay, there's a birth chart. What is that? And how do I have one? How do I get one? And I got a free one online with a generic breakdown. And I started to go through it and go, well, fuck me, that's pretty bloody accurate. And at a point in my life where I was asking questions of who am I, what am I doing here, started to fill in a lot of those, like, awareness around a lot of that. And I remember at the time my partner was studying psychology through the mainstream, you know, pathways of university and stuff, and she was coming to profound insight into the human psyche using psychology. And I'm coming to the same profound insight to the human psyche with astrology. So it just landed for me in a way, and it spoke to me in a way that I was like, why haven't I been shown this or told this? Why is this not? Why isn't this common knowledge? Well, when you dig into the history of it, it used to be. It used to be well integrated into culture and society, and farmers used it, and doctors used it, and creative people used it, and people that ran the law used it, and royals and people that ran, you know, countries used it. And you know, I was like, well, where did we go wrong? And um, when you sort of go back into the history of it, you see this sort of process of like where, you know, it was almost like there's this, you know, keep that knowledge for the very few and give these common class people this other information and knowledge about self. And ridicule that, ostracize that, and outcast that. You're a heretic if you do any of that. Burn you at the stake type shit, right?
Mm.
If you went against the system and the control system. So as soon as I sort of come to that realization, I was like, okay, there's something deeply to this.
Mm.
And that was at a part in my life when I started to question 9/11, the moon landing, JFK assassination, all the mass shooting, like all the things you typically look at when you go through the conspiracy rabbit holes. So I'm thinking, okay, they're hiding something here. They're hiding the truth, right? And as you start to, that set me on the path of wanting to know more about astrology.
Yeah.
Started learning about astrology. Started to understand the symbolism. And as you learn more about that and you start to see it symbolically within reality playing out and utilized, and those with the knowledge and those without the knowledge, and how it's utilized in culture, society, you start to realize, oh, there's something to this that it's being kept from us. And
Mm.
for me personally, astrology is knowledge of self. So that was the sort of breakthrough epiphany for me to go, okay, I get it now. There's a game at play, and we're not told the rules of the game, and we're not given the cheat codes of the sheet, and it's kept for those that know, and those that
Mm.
don't, only show them if they knock on the door and ask. Otherwise, no, it's don't look at that. That's woo woo pseudoscience. Don't go there. Here, have the
Sure.
generic horoscope in the magazine. Don't look into it further than that. And that causes a lot of people with their conditioning to dismiss it completely. And that's good because that's the key, or one of the keys, to awakening consciousness. And this reality that we exist within is designed to keep us consciously at a certain level, just awake enough to keep the wheels of society and culture going, but not too awake that you actually realize it's all a fucking game.
Sure. Sure.
So
So
I
the
came to that sort of realization through my journey. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing, bro. Thanks for sharing. And there's a lot in that. And I want to just like continue to come at this with my own skepticism because I feel like myself, I really have a couple of different archetypes inside myself when it comes to any topics like this. And there's the part that believes one thing, and there's the part that believes the exact opposite thing. And sometimes they're not always in alignment. And so I really want to give the voice to the part of me that like hears some of the things about conspiracy theories and um, feels resistance to actually like getting on board with some of that stuff.
Yep.
Because like I don't necessarily like at the end of the day I don't need to agree with them, but I do want to make sure that like I'm not shutting down one part of me just because it's not 100% on board, right? Like making space for the diversity of opinion, even just inside myself, let alone in community.
For sure, man. Absolutely. So shoot away with your questions of skepticism. Absolutely. For sure, man.
Yeah, well, I
And
think
if I can help, with understanding around that, for sure.
yeah, I feel like the main question I want to bring into this is assuming that I don't believe any of the other conspiracy theories that are going on. If I'm just completely in the like in alignment with the standard narrative that's reported on the news, that's reported in the history books, all of this, can I still get value out of um, astrology, and can I still get value out of some of these alternative practices that are out there? And like, is there any way that I can connect to it that maybe feels like a little bit of an easier path in than having to jump the fence, so to speak, and like um, start believing all these other things that feel a little bit scarier?
For sure, man. Absolutely. Because, these things come together to formulate our worldview. And, you know, what can happen a lot when you awaken consciousness is your worldview can be shattered. And for a lot of people that are not ready for that to happen, it's overwhelming. And then there's also the process of integrating a shift in your awareness into your life, and it's hard because you
Mm.
realize, okay, well, it's wonderful, it's all bullshit and everything, but I still got to fucking go to work. I still got to pay the bills. I still got to be as a human. I still got to, all my real life obligations. So that's where someone with my sort of experience and background and my skill set can help sort of navigate people back to self. you don't need belief as a fundamental mechanism for alignment in any type of modality. You don't have to believe in it for it to be useful for you. So that's the first thing, because a lot of people go, "I don't believe in astrology," but belief's not required. It doesn't require your belief in it, and astrology will be just fine even if you don't believe in it, and you can still benefit from it without actually believing in it. So it is complex, but so is mapping human consciousness. Like we're complex people. Like it's very dynamic and diversive and unique in its expression of life. So first of all, don't try and get all clear and clarity and work it all out from the get go. With astrology, it's a language written in symbolism, and we've been conditioned to learn through the left brain, rational reasoning and logic. So symbolic, symbolism, intuitive, instinctful, receptive, sort of feminine, imaginative, visualizing, those concepts and things. We're not really fostered and taught that to utilize that aspect of mind. But know that when you start to learn the language of the symbolism, then you'll start to see the world and self and life through symbolism. And it changes perspective completely. Our ancestors mapped human consciousness, and they mapped a pathway of evolving consciousness to a place of enlightenment. And then what do they do with that knowledge and information? You can't write that on parchment paper or engrave it in hieroglyphics on a stone wall. You can't put that physically in this world, because the physical world is temporal. It's the non-existence. It's the mayor of the illusion, right? It's the physical world is the illusion, and what that means is that once physical matter, is existing, it's now at its final resting place, and it can only be that thing until it breaks down into its base materials and is transformed back into energy. So even something written in stone or etched in parchment paper or whatever, it won't last forever. If we look up to the sky and we see that the stars of the sky are the same stars in the sky that the first people ever that stepped foot on this earth looked at. Now, yes, there is movement amongst them in the sense that the wandering stars known as planets are always orbiting and moving about, and the sun and the moon and all the different cycles within cycles within cycles. Yes, but the fixed stars, they're fixed in place, and they're permanently fixed into that place. Now, it doesn't matter whether you believe the model we're shown and it's a heliocentric model and we're a globe and floating around, or if you're a flat earther and you're looking at a fixed sky. It doesn't really matter which way you look at it. The fact of the matter bears the same, is that is the same. Right now, what our ancestors did, and the sages and the prophets and the seers and the gurus and the guides of the past that have worked it out, this is how you come here and free yourself, liberate the soul, is they wrote it into the stars. So they basically symbolized aspects of reality, consciousness, life, the human experience, and they placed it upon the stars.
Through myth and story, or
through myth, through story, through alignments, and through associating particular phenomena, that lived experience that happens cyclical here for us in this Earth school, and then they align that to particular alignments within the sky. Oh, look, when this happens every year, this sort of means this for the Earth. Oh, so that happens every year. Yeah. So now there's a cycle associated to that. And now you look at the way in which consciousness unfolds and how we experience birth, life, and death, and all of the in-between, and it's written. And it's not to say that that's causing that. We're reflecting each other. Right? So that's the macrocosm. That's the big picture. We're the small little microcosm experiencing that in miniature here. So, a lot of the ancient mystery schools and a lot of the religions, a lot of the, enlightened beings of the past had the knowledge of that. So for very good reason, the mundane, common person is not given access freely to that, have to actually seek that knowledge of self out. Um, so yeah, it's I don't know
That
if
feels
that's
like it
answered the
resonates
question.
to me. It feels that last part feels like it resonates to me in the sense that I never really looked for astrology until I gave you a call a week ago, because I feel like there was a part of me that was curious, but most of me didn't really understand how it all fit, how it was actually relevant to my life. And then I think my own sense of journey and evolution outside of astrology got me to a point where in that session, the things you were saying, the tiny little side comments that were just like, oh, because this planet is in this house, which I still don't fully understand exactly what that means, but the way that you described it was like, okay, so when the sun was rising at the time I was born, when my consciousness was the most connected to this other realm, there were some things going on, and now that's happening again for the first time in 30 years or whatever it is. I'm definitely misquoting it, but like starting to like match up in my mind that there could be some like deep subconscious psychological things going on for me as a baby that's now become a man that are playing out here in the tangible. And I'm not closed to the idea that there's some like deep metaphysical spiritual things going on here that I just won't even try to put words around.
100%, mate. If you think about it, life's about cycles, right? Every day in one whole day is a cycle of a complete year. The sun rises in the morning, that's typical of spring, right? First light, new birth, new day, spring. The sun reaches zenith at 12 o'clock midday, heat of the day, hot, that's our summer. The sun falls in the afternoon and sets, that's fall or autumn, right? And then there's the cold, dark part of winter when the sun is at midnight. So in one day, there is symbolically embedded a whole year, and then there is cycles within cycles within cycles, just as there is a minute cycling within the hour, and the hour within the day, and the day within the week, and the week within the month, and the month within the year, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, how do we quantify those cycles? How do we link those cycles to certain phenomena experienced, lived, and also outside of us? That's the cosmic clock. That's the clock. You look at a lot of it's been embodied embedded symbolically in a lot of movies, especially Hollywood, right? Movies. They always have a way to sneakily put this idea or concept of a clock. One of the best ever. I'm not sure if it's before your time, but I grew up with a movie called The Dark Crystal. Have you ever
Okay.
seen The Dark Crystal?
No, don't know.
Animated movie. The guy that made the Muppets made The Dark Crystal, and man, even back then, like you just go watch that movie. It's an animated, not animated. It's actually made of puppets, right?
Right.
It's phenomenal. Especially if you want a little bit of, you know, off the Magic Dragon and watch that movie. It'll blow your mind. But anyway, there's a clock, right? Even our time, you look at the clock on the wall. It's 12 numbers. Why not 10? 12. Isn't there 12 signs of the zodiac?
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you just like little things like that. You're just like, oh yeah, I didn't really think of that. Yeah, until you do, and then you can't unthink it, you can't unconnect it. And once you start connecting these things and you connect your lived experience to astrological phenomena, oh, so that's happening and that relates to this part of me happening. Now, there is not consensus in the astrological world about causation or correlation. Is Jupiter in Gemini causing these types of phenomenon, or are these phenomena happening cyclically and Jupiter in Gemini just correlates to that? It's like a correlation. I'm in the camp of correlation. I don't look at it's, Saturn's doing this to you. I look at it as there's an expression of consciousness that expresses this way, and Saturn typifies that. It correlates to the way it expresses. So you start to tie through your journey of astrological understanding and awareness, whether it's personal exploration or through someone like myself professionally, you start to sort of cyclically come back to these cycles and start to learn the cycles. And then you
So,
can do what they say is, which is to move into flow.
yeah.
And you're going with the flow,
So as a way for me to interpret this and to translate it slightly, what I'm hearing is, especially in countries that are further away from the equator where we have seasons. Like I lived in Scotland for a while and I live in Melbourne now, and we have summers where we have nice long days with lots of sun, and we have winters where, in Scotland it was like 4 hours of sun every day and snowing. And throughout the seasons of winter, just by default, I would find myself wanting to bunker down and like hibernate a little bit and have more rest. And throughout the seasons of summer, it was much more of a time to go out socializing and being really active in the world. And what I could say is that, like, I'm noticing these cycles happening that every year just happens to be every year around, well, in the Northern Hemisphere, June, July, August, I'm really like active. And around December, I'm really wanting to rest. Like, interesting. Wonder if that has anything to do with it. It's obviously the cycle of the seasons. And so what I'm hearing you say is that on a much larger scale of both time and space, there's these cycles happening in the universe, in our solar system especially, that may not be causing what's happening to each of us, but like there's patterns here.
100%, mate. 100%. And when you learn these cycles and learn what they represent and learn that certain astrological phenomena are going to relate to specific expressions within that, or expressions of, experience within that cycle, like, oh, yeah, okay, of course that's going to happen. The classic example is COVID-19. The pandemic. And in 2019, I started saying, oh, we're in for a massive fucking year and a wake up year in 2020, and it's going to be like worldwide, like catastrophic. Now, I didn't pick the pandemic as such, but, it was like this astrological alignment is most likely going to represent these types of themes, which was all about worldwide fear or panic and the need for taking personal responsibility for your emotional well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you placed in 2020 your need for emotional security on the system, then it had a pretty set narrative to tell you, which was, you better be afraid you're going to die. Everyone's going to die. Your grandma's going to die. Your neighbor's going to die. You better mask up. You better lock down. You better social distance. You better do all those things. Now, fair enough, for a vast majority of people, that's what the system was saying, that's what you've got to do, and that's how they responded. For me, because of my own journey and my personal awakening journey that happened much, much before that, and my awareness of the cycles, I was like, of course that's what they're going to do. Because the clock is saying that's the time. And it was like Saturn and Pluto had a conjunction, which they do every 40 years in the sign of Capricorn. Well, Pluto is terrifying, and Saturn is death, fear, and Capricorn is the goat god in the Greek mythology called Pan, which is where we get the root word of pandemic, panic, pandemonium, right? So it's like you combine all that story and that's written up there, and the next thing it plays out down here, and you're like, okay. Now, you had choice and you could navigate based on what you were told and to respond and how you did, and most people towed in line with that. I was one of those fringe dwellers that went, fuck that shit. No, I'm not doing that or being that. That's what they're trying to tell me to do. And I'm just going to take care of my own emotional well-being and I'll be over here. So, understanding the cycles, understanding how they work and represent and what they mean for consciousness and how it expresses means you can navigate them a lot better. Yeah. And in the sense of tying this into business, JP Morgan, this deceased man, he was an investment banker in 1800s, 1900s. He's quoted as saying, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. It's a very famous astrological quote by him. And the reason why the billionaires do and why they're billionaires is because they understand the cycles and they work to the cycles. Yeah. Regardless of, the trends, they go to the cycles and they just play the cycle. That's where we're at. That's what's going to happen. Go with it, and yeah.
I think anyone who's like done any deep looking into things like the stock market is very familiar with the fact that the cycle is going to be a massive driver of where we're at. And I read a great book maybe 10 years ago called The Fourth Turning, which was actually really speaking about how in the economy on the global level and also in all the smaller subsections as well, there are these, they defined it as 80-year cycles that come about, which are aligned to a human lifetime, and that they because of the changing demographics and the number of, let's say baby boomers being a much larger population and navigating certain life events together, like the wars or the depression or, like 9/11 or whatever it happens to be. If I navigate that as a child versus navigating it as a parent, I'm going to have a different response. And so there's going to be different effects on the economy and all these other things. And they predicted, like, as well, I read this in 2010 or something, and it was predicting like a massive like event happening around 2020 or that kind of chapter. And it's interesting just to feel that it feels like the same kind of conversation, but one looking at the stars, the other looking at just, I would say, like a smaller subsection.
Yeah. Yeah. And like even, human lifespan and all of those things, astrologically, cyclically, we can look to which planetary bodies represent, life expectancy, lifespan, and look them in the natal chart. And we can look at, the unfoldment of life experience for people through, so yeah, man, I've read that same book. I know the one you're talking about. Yeah. So,
Awesome.
yeah, for
So,
sure.
so on this topic then, so I think before we jump in, one thing you said to me at the start of our session was that this is the map, not the terrain. And I'd love for you just to reiterate that in your own words, or they were your words, but your own words again, so that like we can get some context on how to hear some of this information.
Yeah, so you have a birth chart. You are not your birth chart. Most people, when they first find out about astrology and their birth chart, they get a copy of their birth chart and then they go to the internet and they type in, oh, I've got Saturn in the eighth house. Oh, it's in Pisces. Oh my God, that means this. Holy fuck. And they try to fit themselves into the interpretation of what that means. It's the wrong way around, right? So you've got to think of it like you are a certain way, you have a certain makeup. How do I understand that? Can the chart illuminate self-awareness around my patterns, my energetics, my consciousness, and the makeup of all of those things, and that come together to form this unique sort of character and personality of Pat or Luke or whatever? And that's how you utilize astrology as a tool for the self-awareness, not you've got to try and be your chart and fit into the idea of what that is. A lot of traditional type astrologies will try and say it's more fatalistic and you are only restricted by your chart and that's all you're ever going to be. And modern thinking is like, no, it's a blueprint, but like all blueprints, we can rewrite aspects and there is a huge spectrum of expression for one particular energetic placement in your chart. And if we use it to define us, we're missing the magic of it. We're using it to help understand. And then what does that mean in relation to this aspect of me? And how can I develop the best quality expression of that, its highest octave, its most transcendental level? So that's what astrology is. It's not like a psychic reading or a tarot or something like that where you're going to get prediction and sort of a bit of guidance on what may or may not happen. Astrology is more like a tool of self-awareness and a map of your evolution, and therefore it's sort of something like you would just refer to in time. It's like if you're going on a big long journey, let's say you started here and like I'm on the Gold Coast and I want to end up in Iceland, and Gold Coast is my birth and Iceland is my death. Well, I'm going to go about it, but occasionally I'm going to be lost and need to pull out the map and go, where the fuck am I? What am I doing? So astrology is like that on your life experience. It's like, all right, well, where am I at? Who am I? Another way to think of it is this, right? We're all born into a vehicle for the human experience, right? And the body and the identity is that vehicle. And some people are born in Ferraris and some people Datsuns and some people Combis, right? We're not all in Ferraris, like newsflash. Some of us are because of our karmic evolution. We've just evolved to a point where we're just fucking nailing life and consciousness and, got our shit sorted and really just, enlightened beings type. Well, there's probably a lot of karmic influence in the journey of that soul to get to that point. Now, having said that, if you're in a Datsun, doesn't mean that, oh my God, I'm in a Datsun, means that you can make that the most fucking luxurious, fast-paced, fucking kick-ass Datsun that ever was in this fucking world. So you've been given, your vehicle for this life, but that doesn't mean you have to continually drive a beat-up, shitty, smoke-filled, crappy vehicle. It means you've got to work on the self to make that the most amazing vehicle for yourself. And then for a very small percentage of people, most people in the spiritual community would like to think that this is them, but the fact of the matter is the percentages are very small.
Yeah.
maybe between 2 to 5% of people are on an expedited evolutionary process that are looking for fast track to enlightenment. But that's the abstinence of like complete egoic desire. It's transcendence of the self. And most people want like, I want to be the spiritual influencer with abundance and all these things, and I'm going to be also Christ. Well, it's sort of counterintuitive to those things. But some people born in a Datsun can actually step out of that completely and be the not self and transcend completely and evolve and enlighten themselves.
Mm.
The actual numbers, the probability of that is very, very, very tiny. Tiny. Most people are not even aware they're in a Datto and driving it around thinking, oh yeah, that's good. I know what I'm doing, who I am.
Mm.
Some people awaken to the fact that I'm in a Datto and I'm fucking not going to drive this shitty Datto anymore with beat up seats and smoky fucking exhaust. I'm going to do some work on it. That's when you start working on yourself. And then
Mm.
people go, whoa, nice Datto, man. So, the chart is like, what have I got to work with here and how do I work with it? Where are my challenges and my weaknesses and my difficulties here? Where are my strengths? Where are my qualities? What's the best use of myself in this life? Fundamentally, as a person in this vehicle, what am I here to do? But as a soul, how am I here to evolve? And how do I integrate that soul's journey into my human journey? And then when you do that, there's a certain level of magic. If you can do your evolutionary soul work in the physical here and be in the human and integrate what you're doing as a human as well at the same time, for me, that's the goal for me. And like the work that I help people do is taking that gnosis of the spiritual connection that we have, integrating that, and how do I be in this world?
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, so to break that down into like how I'm interpreting the use of these tools in my life and then for others potentially as well, is that by following this map, I'm going to understand how I can align myself with the cycles of life so that I can work with the flow of life and have a smoother possible ride towards my ultimate goal of inner peace and um, let's say enlightenment, let's say, but like ultimately what I mean by that is fulfillment, joy,
Mm-hmm.
inner peace. And as part of that, there will be the things that I'm trying to achieve at a human level, like in my business, for example, or in my family or with my community. And again, like there might be certain times of the year that are more conducive to working on my business, and there might be other times where it's more about building the foundations and the habits, which is a big lesson I took out of our session of like this first quarter for me is just get my foundations rock solid. Before our chat, I was ready to drop an unreasonably large amount of money on a course to like scale my business. And it was a great reflection of it's not the time yet. Like foundations first. And that pattern that I have as an Aries, but also just a habit of impatience was really present. And yeah, it's clear that, I get to do that eventually, but like maybe second half of the year or even next year. And it resonated because I see it in myself so clearly as just something that I've done time and time again.
And what astrology allows us to do is to be where we're at instead of being where we think we need to be or what
Yeah.
we want. It's like just be where you're at. That's where you're at right now. If it's 9 o'clock at night, you're not getting up and starting your morning routine,
Mm.
right? Why? Because it's 9 o'clock at night. I'm resting now. I'm getting ready for sleep. I'm doing my wind down. I'm disconnecting. I'm starting to get into that like chill mode.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes people are in their life in a symbolic moment of 9 o'clock at night,
Mm-hmm.
and they're out there trying to like conquer the business world, and it's like it's not the time, man. It's
Mm.
time to like pull back a little bit and integrate, be a bit more contemplative and reflective, may reevaluate where you're at, which is what happens at night time. You sort of reflect on the day, right? As it's all
Mm.
come to a close, if you're not
Yeah.
glued to some sort of external, device.
Even the dream
But
world, though, right, is that processing time. And
yeah. So
yeah.
like, if we think of life like that, and even within a day, we have different aspects that called upon. Like you wake up, right? Let's do this. I'm ready to go. What am I going to do? What's my to-do list? What are my obligations? What am I getting done? Oh shit, fuck! It's midday. Okay, a bit of a pause. I've got to eat something maybe, oh, it's the afternoon. I'm going to wind down, spend more time with my family. All this is reflected in the chart, like in one day, but also in the cycle of a month, a year, and then all the planetary cycles, which go from like 18 months, 2.5 years, 12 years, 28 years. Beyond that, it's 50 years, then it's 84 years, then it's 175 years, then it's 250 year cycles. It's like we can
Right.
see.
Wow.
So we got cycles within cycles within cycles. Sometimes there's a culminating of two cycles that really create this point. And certain times in our lives, we might feel like, fuck, everything's just like, I don't have to do anything. And it's like my hands are magic and it's all happening. And other times we're going to struggle to get shit done. And it's like,
Yeah.
we're just in a phase that if we recognize the phase in the cycle, we can act accordingly. We don't need to be anywhere other than where we're at,
Love that.
And sometimes for some people, not for everyone, but that can be a bit like, oh, I don't really like that astrology reading because he told me this is not where I'm supposed to be. It's like, well, go against it if you want, but you'll struggle. And any time that ego takes control, we disconnect from the flow of life because we know better. And there's a reason why, that aspect of ego is detrimental to us and our ultimate well-being is because it doesn't fucking know better. It's a useful vehicle to help us do and be, but when it takes control and we get stubborn or self what's the word, self-sabotaging and all sorts of shitty behavior, we end up in way more energy, less productivity, and fucking back to square one. And we've got to come back because we missed a step, and that's what wasn't called for us at that time. So understanding your personal energetics for you, like exactly, let's work on foundation because if you're going to be all those things and do all those things, you've got to come from that anchored place, and that's what your astrology was reflective of. Is like, yeah, work on that shit, man. That's important because you are going to be needed to impact, to help people integrate into the business world and new leaders and ways of being and that because you have a unique sort of very ability to sort of look beyond the now and see what it could be and how better it might be. And then the job is to guide and help and support people along that journey. And like that's an important sort of, valued need that's going to be needed as we collectively make a huge transition over the next few years. So those types of people that can sort of hold the light for others that seek it, and that's what you're doing here. The time will come, man, and you'll know. And you're an Aries. You're not short on impulsive sort of initiation of like, let's get it done, let's go, let's just do it. So that's there. It's not like that's that quality of you have to like really work hard at. It's natural. So it's like, okay, what's the other aspect here to blend and balance that? Well, be grounded, be present, be patient, be in the here and now. Establish really good foundations so that as changes come through and big changes for you personally, right? You're able to handle whatever's thrown your way.
Yeah, awesome. And this is so like I'm getting so much value out of this for my journey, and I'd love to like broaden this out now to get a little bit of a sense of what 2024 has in store for the collective. And so anyone listening to this, regardless of their own personal placements, can get a feel of how to work with the flow rather than against it. And if you'd like, you can start more general, and I would love to bring in a sense of business, money, leadership, that world, whatever way you want to interpret that.
Yep. So the business planet is Saturn, and Saturn's in Pisces at the moment. And we're integrating in the sense of business spirituality, right? And that's important as we make a collective transition into a new frequency of consciousness and the way we express. And businesses that can adapt and integrate spirituality into their practices and their people and their, resources and the way they operate are going to really thrive and be businesses that are like stand out, because people are not going to, as we transition collectively in a new level of consciousness that's burgeoning, is that the word, on the collective. People are not going to sell their soul anymore for their job or career, right? And in the old sort of toxic patriarchal sort of capitalist type system, not that there's anything wrong with any of that, it's served us to this point, but it's no longer going to serve us because it requires a sacrifice in order to be successful, you know? Not for everyone, but as a collective, like you've got to fucking sell your soul to, you know, and people aren't going to continue to do that. So businesses that rely on that type of sell your soul and you just fucking have to turn up and bad luck and all that, it's not going to work. Now, that also means that there is going to be the law of equivalent exchange. And you're not also going to be able to just take an easy street and not have to fucking do anything. You're going to have to work, but it's going to be equivalent exchange. Like I put effort in, I'm going to get effort out. I'm value and equality as a result. So at the moment with Saturn in Pisces, we've got to overcome the poor me, the blame, and the victim. For a lot of people since COVID in particular, there's a lot of reasons to be disgruntled at the system and corporations, governments, this sort of political corporatized system that really looks to, you know, keep people oppressed in a way. Yes, okay, you're aware now, you've had 2020 vision, which is clarity, right? That's what happened in 2020. You didn't like what you saw, bad luck, right? It's clarity, it's perfect vision. Just doesn't mean what you were looking at was great. It's like, oh, it's fucking what? It's manipulated. There's control, there's coercion, there's corruption, there's all this. I thought it was like none of that. No, I mean there's a lot of that. Okay, so I've got to overcome it and transcend it. I can't use it as a reason to stay, you know, poor me in the system and right, because I'm going to be eaten up with it. So that as a paramount over this, and Saturn's in Pisces now, right through till the end of 2025, a little bit of 2026. So that's going to be really important. Integrating your own spiritual, philosophical meaning and understanding into your work you do. And if you're an entrepreneur, like building it on really spiritual values as well. So, and for whatever they are for you, like, you know, it's not to say you have to be religious or spiritual or whatever. If it's atheistic or whatever that is, then integrate that into how you operate and do business.
The way I would interpret that, just to give other people an access point, is just a sense of purpose, a sense of like service, contribution.
Exactly. It's not self-serving. It's more service to many, contribution, meaningful value. How do I be of use? How does what I do improve other people's like experience in life? And there's many ways in which you can apply that understanding. Jupiter brings growth and expansion and opportunities. Jupiter's in Taurus at the moment, moving into a conjunction with Uranus. We're going to see sudden millionaires, sudden billionaires, a lot of people that are going to go through extreme changes in their wealth and finances as Jupiter is in Taurus, the sign that rules over money and wealth. We're also going to see volatility still, though, in the stock market, the money, you know, system in general, because we're moving towards 25, 26, probably a transition of the monetary system and, you know, the way in which we use a measure of exchange, which is what money is. So in that sense, I would say, you know, have a savings plan, expect the unexpected, don't necessarily have like a rigid sort of like approach, be flexible and go with the flow. Jupiter will move into Gemini in May and spend a year in Gemini. Gemini is messaging, marketing, and communication, among other things. So it's going to be a real time for like, am I on point with my messaging? Am I expressing what I'm doing and how am I doing it with the way that I communicate in my business? There's probably going to be a lot of information that we're going to deal with as Jupiter moves into Gemini as a collective of like, whoa, there's a lot happening and coming to light, and we've got to integrate like AI's involvement into business and strategy. And can we successfully, like that's a question to be answered on a big level over the next 5 years, is can humanity successfully integrate AI in the benefit that can bring to humanity, or will it be overused, misused, or you know, all of a sudden end up in that we become the slaves to it? So I'm not going to get involved in what that might mean, but it's an interesting period of time. So, it's not to say AI is the devil, but also to say just be mindful of, how much influence it has and control. And what AI can do is it can make a lot of the mundane things streamless and easy, but it cannot replace human creativity.
Sure.
And, that's where I think a lot of people are going to be mistaken. I've seen a lot of big business type promoters and entrepreneurs really getting on the AI bandwagon and how good it's going to be for business. And I think that might be in the long term to their detriment, because I don't think it's the savior that people think it is. And if they're not integrating, contribution, meaningful fucking fulfillment and service to many and that, and they're just using AI for the very reasons as like YOLO and like let's just get what I can to claim for. I think that's gonna that concept and idea is going to be challenged in these next few years. Um,
Can I quickly just sort of understand what is it in the charts and the planetary movements that you're saying that indicates that the next 5 years will have some kind of like big story to tell around that in particular?
yeah, so AI story is Pluto into Aquarius that happened just a couple of days ago. It happened briefly in 2023. It's going to be most of 2024. And then in 2025, we'll have Pluto in Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign of like advanced technology. Right? So AI falls under the banner of Aquarian for sure, artificial intelligence, that type of thing. But also Aquarius is humanity. Right? It's the consciousness of the people. And can we integrate that sort of technology? Is there going to be subversive, powers that be, or dark, sinister control behind it? And can it be used for the empowerment of a awakened humanity, or will it be further tool for the control of humanity? That's what I see playing out over this period of time, especially the first few years of Pluto and Aquarius. And there's very good reason for that, because in 2025 and 2026, we have all of the outer planets and um, Saturn and Jupiter. So that's five of the planets out of the 10 main planets used in astrology. And those five are the power hitters. When they change their sign, their frequency, the shit changes here in a big way. So
Just
they're
quickly
all,
pause on that. I'd love to just explain how I understand it, which is that, and please correct me, which I think you're going to need to. But in the night sky, or even in any sky, the constellations are up there, and they're obviously through the cycles of time going to be moving throughout the sky, and then the planets are moving at different rates because they're much closer to us and they're orbiting the sun. So throughout the course of time, the planets move from being in particular star constellations in the sky, whether it be Capricorn, for example, is a particular constellation of stars, and so them moving from one sign to another is simply just in the sky objectively with a telescope, one planet moving to a different place in the sky, which has different stars in it, but through the application of myth and understanding the cycles and the ways that this wisdom has been encoded for hundreds of or tens of thousands of years, let's say, who knows? That's how we can notice those patterns and apply some of that pattern recognition to predictions.
absolutely, exactly. Now, there's
Okay.
one caveat there, is that the constellations represent the fixed stars, and we in Western astrology use what's called the zodiac, which is free of the constellations. It's based upon the constellations, but it's more pinned to the ecliptic and the solstices and equinoxes. So, therefore, the zodiac moves within the constellations, and the planets move within the constellations and the zodiac. And that's how we get epochs and great years, and that's how we might have heard of something called the precession of the equinoxes. And the precession of the equinoxes means that the zodiac retrogrades through the constellations, and the equinox at spring, which is the Aries ingress. So when the sun moves into Aries, it's our spring in the north and autumn in the south. Equinox, equal day, equal night. We know that phenomena exists because we can measure the day and night here on Earth. Now, at the moment, that equinox point in Aries is in the constellation in the sky, Pisces. So when the sun goes into the zodiac sign of Aries, it's actually in the sky in the constellations just in Pisces. Now, why is there a difference? Well, that's the precession, and that point every 72 years goes backwards in a sign 1 degree. So every 72 years we slip backwards through a constellation, and that gives us the age of Pisces, and then the transition into the age of Aquarius, when the zodiac equinox date will align with the constellation of Aquarius. So
Right.
the song, The Dawning of the Age of Aquarius, is that we're coming into this period of transition of the ages. So there's not consensus in the astrological world as exactly when or if it may have happened or will happen or when. But we look to the expression of consciousness here and the way in which we live and evolve in this world as to indicators as to where are we. And my belief is that we most likely are probably sort of astrologically in the age of Aquarius, consciously being conditioned to stay in the age of Pisces. That's a
Sure.
topic that
So
we
it's going
probably
to
will
take a
explore in another time.
so it just takes a little bit more of a lag time to catch up because
That's
of
right.
the human desire to hold on.
So we can look back at Pluto's transit of 250 years through the zodiac, and we can look, when was Pluto last in Aquarius? Well, what was happening on Earth when Pluto was in Aquarius was American independence and the French Revolution, to name two things. So what is the consciousness of the people that are claiming freedom and independence from England, right, in general, which at that time was like the sort of world's, democracy or even system hierarchy of control, whatever, and still to a degree in some countries the same. But the American independence was about independence from the king. So the people rose up and said, hey, this is our place and our right to be and our right to bear arms, and the Constitution was formed and all of that. That was a time when Pluto was in Aquarius. And the French Revolution, which was then the people of France rose up against their tyrannical government and said, fuck off, basically. And that was a really pinnacle time of revolution and renaissance. So that was the last time Pluto was in Aquarius. Pluto just moved back into Aquarius now. So, and what
Interesting.
happened through COVID is we were brought to light all of the corruption,
Yep.
all of the ways in which there's been control and hidden manipulation from behind
Yeah.
the scenes is coming to light. It's going to continue to come to light. And then it'll have twofold effect on the people. They'll cause this awakening and like, what? Awareness shift, and then the action that follows that of like, well, you know what? Fuck your system. Fuck the rules.
Yeah,
Fuck the government. Fuck the system. You know what I mean? So that
for
is
sure.
going to happen.
I want to
Three.
acknowledge as well as like
Yep.
I'm also hearing other people like Ray Dalio, who one of the biggest hedge fund managers in the world, for example, who's been tracking these long term cycles for decades actually and talking about it for a long time. And I think people in the business world will really resonate with Ray Dalio if they don't already know him. But he speaks about how a lot of the macro factors we're seeing are indicating that American civil war in the next 5 to 10 years is not out of the realms of possibility. Global war is not out of the realms of possibilities. These are things that I just want to acknowledge, like, regardless of the reasons for it, because I think different people have different like triggers or catalysts around what they think is going to cause it. But like the patterns that people from many different walks of life are noticing is that there are changes in the air, and the question is like, what can we control? How can we like get in alignment with it in a way that like makes it a smoother ride for all of us, but also doesn't like just allow the things that aren't in line with our values to just take over as well.
Yeah, big question, and everyone's point of view and point of reference to that question is going to be different based on their personal needs, wants, desires, and their ideals. I don't think there is one answer to that. Personally, for me, for the practice and what I help other people come to that place of is detach from it all into a place of observation and awareness and allowance, right? When we consciously shift frequencies and awaken collectively and we start to see clearly, then the way in which we live and act and interact and how we do commerce and business and money and trade and, tend to our basic needs as humans, that's all going to change. Now, here's the thing about humans that the vast majority of people that are not necessarily consciously aware is they don't change in a place of comfort. No change happens in comfort. So if people are kept stuck in comfort, nothing's ever going to change. So what will most likely happen as these big shifts in 24 lead into this 2025, 2026 period of like, well, everything's changing, is change through conflict. And conflict is upheaval. Conflict is, chaotic in the sense of like very unpredictable. And conflict is in like, the playing out of, the tension because it's different, all the differences, the point of difference, and they culminate into a point of conflict. And, you mentioned about US civil war or personal like invasion, you mentioned about world conflict. I look at it like this. I take my information from lots of different sources, and then I utilize all the different points of view and perspective from the people that I trust and respect to a degree, even though I don't hinge to them wholeheartedly. And I take that and I sort of look at it in context to that. And when I see a reflection of what's happening and the, perspectives and opinions aligning to that, I'm like, okay, it's probably pretty likely we're going to move to conflict, and maybe by the end of this year we'll be in some type of live war, maybe on multiple areas. The US is an interesting place at the moment. They've got an eclipse happening this year, which is a completion eclipse from the one that was in 2017. 2017 eclipse went across America like that, and this next eclipse in April goes across America like that. So you're going to have this essence like a cosmic X or hex across the states. Plus, they're having what's known as their Pluto return. So where Pluto was in the sky at the formulation of the American independence, it's back at that same point. Well, Pluto's theme is to transform through crisis, and one of the symbols is the phoenix rising from the ashes. What is the ashes and the fire of the phoenix is all the impurities and everything burnt down, all the not things that are aligned, and then the new phoenix can rise. So America is certainly having that phoenix moment. I got a lot of clients in America like, what the fuck? So helping them sort of integrate personally through that. Personally, it's, take care of your basic needs, be open and flexible to change in a big way, be prepared. So if there are indicators to go, well, we're really in a state of like fucking, personal security, or like shit, the fucking bank run or an economic collapse or some sort of hot war, like have you got a bit of a plan? Like, have you got supplies? Are you prepared to that level? And if you aren't, what would you need to do? Not to say you should panic and worry and stress about that, but I think part of being an awakened sort of sovereign type, free, independent, liberated soul is to be personally responsible. And there's no good going around, drinking, cacao, and dancing with your Kundalini, fire breathing meditations and all sorts of spiritual woo woo, and not realizing fucking world's about to change in a big way. So you got to sort of, you got to
I'm
dance
just
that
laughing
line.
because you basically just named everything I do.
Nothing wrong with those things,
Yeah. No,
but sometimes they can be used as a means to go, everything's just got to be rainbows and lollipops. Well, we can look towards that beyond 27, but between now and then, let's get serious, be safe. There's most likely going to be a massive change in a huge way. And if you use COVID as a way to look at how, mass society deals with those types of things, we're not equipped. Most people freak the fuck out and they go and buy toilet paper really quickly, and then they're fighting in the aisles over shit paper. So, if there is some sort of like major events, war, cataclysm, economic, instability, there's a lot of instability already. So, as someone that has different awareness, different point of view, awakened sort of consciousness, you have to be responsible and like act accordingly. And you also have to show people that there is there's not, you have to be this or that. You can be that, you know?
Mm.
And this or that is like Republican, Democrat, you know, Israel, Palestine, or whatever you got, which side are you going to be? It's like, fucking none of that shit, man. I'm a human for people, like, you know, peace, love, and all that. Yeah, absolutely. But when there is chaos and unpredictability, it's like people are going to gravitate towards the ones that are like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's not my jam, that's not my world. Which
Yeah.
is why in the back of COVID that I did so well personally in growth in the work that I do is because that's how I went through it. I went, I can buy into that shit,
Yeah. I mean,
you
from a
know.
leadership perspective, being calm within the chaos is tried and tested. That's worked for centuries, thousands of years. It's just a principle that stands true. Um, and I think one thing that helps, like me at least, in navigating all of this is knowing that this is a cycle as well, right? Like, cool, this too shall pass. If there is something that comes up, which there always is something, then it's gonna pass, and there'll be someone else.
Mate, nothing new under the sun. And yeah, I think it's an honour to be here at this time as we really are on a frontier of what we could really potentially do when we connect with ourselves, with one another, and with Source in whatever personal way that works for you, and how we can recreate different ways to live, to be, to do business, to communicate, to comment, like all the different ways in which we can. When we be shackled from an idea of how it's supposed to be and what
Mm,
you're supposed to do and who you're supposed to do that for and why, and really liberate ourselves from that. And I think that the aftermath of whatever transition we're about to go through, I think that is the work that's going to be for the people that remain. Um, yeah, not to say everyone's going to die, but there's probably going to be a lot of like casualties,
sure. Yeah.
you know. So there's no dancing around that either. But
Mm,
yeah, I think it's a privilege to be here, and I think that wherever you are is exactly where you're supposed to be. Just honor that and be present. And you know, when you practice that being present, what you need to do and how you need to respond, you'll know. You
mm,
won't need to like, what do you mean? What's going to happen? Blah, 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 what I got to do? Just hey, turn up every day. Be conscious. Be aware. Be present. You know,
mm.
and yeah, you'll navigate this period of great change, potential, um, absolutely just fine.
Beautiful words, man. Beautiful advice. Do you have any other advice or any other tips for navigating this, whether it's from your own experience or from what the charts are saying?
Um, like find what the thing is that you are attached to that you can't be or live without. Challenge that idea, especially when it comes to what is going on in the outer world. I can't
Mm,
live without my Netflix, or I can't live without money, or whatever. Just sort of be asking the question around what is the thing that if I lost I wouldn't be able to cope, and then how do I make peace with that so that I could be resilient enough to deal with whatever comes my way. Because if we give conscious thought and contemplation to the worst possible scenario and we make peace with that, we're pretty free then to be able to deal with whatever comes our way.
yeah.
But when we avoid even thinking, like for example, death for most people is like, oh, don't talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. It's like every person will die
Mm-hmm.
at some point in your life. That's inevitable.
Yeah.
So why not make peace with it?
Yeah.
So, whatever there is, the thing that you think is for you, if that wasn't here, I don't know what I'd do. Well, start contemplating what would you do if it wasn't?
Mm,
How would you be free of that attachment and still be okay? Still know within you have the resources and the resilience to survive and thrive beyond that. I say to people all the time, if you can get to a place where you're butt naked, not a possession in the world, and completely abandoned in the desert, and you're still okay, then you're cool.
mm-hmm.
You're cool. That doesn't mean that's how you're going to live. It just means that if you imagine that everything disappeared, you had nothing, you're on your own, you're butt naked, and you're fucking in the desert,
Yeah.
and you knew, fuck, I'll be okay. Why would I be okay in that place? Because I know that I'm a soul having a human experience, and even if that ends, I'm okay. The part of me that's eternal goes on. So that takes a little bit of contemplation, reflection, and that's the work, right? So
Mm.
at the first half of this year, challenge yourself to sort of look at where you're attached to the outside world and it needing to be or needing to have it in a certain way, and sort of think, well, what if that, what if I woke up and I had no car? What if I
Mm.
woke up and my job, I couldn't go to work, or I couldn't access money in the bank, or the food ran out? Like, what would I do? Would I be okay? Oh shit! I have to contemplate these things, because that allows you to be in a place of complete presence and able to deal with whatever is thrown your way.
Mm.
And that's not to say those things are going to happen, but if you're at peace with them, it doesn't matter what happens.
Mm.
You're like, I'm cool.
Mm.
So that's my
Beautiful.
advice.
I'm really hearing that resilience that gets formed through that, and that
Mm,
ability to navigate all of life's mysteries.
for sure, man.
Thanks, brother. Well, it's been a really, really powerful conversation, man. Really deep, and I appreciate all of your wisdom and all of um, your knowledge as well that you've shared on this topic. And how can people find you if they want to go deeper? Perhaps they want to have a one-on-one session like I did to get that personalized map for 2024 or a particular situation, perhaps as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So I help people with guidance at the start of the year for the planning the year out, but also just with whatever's going on in life that you're challenged with. Your chart, it can illuminate some helpful tools for you, and awareness, and different ways to see things and perceive things, and where the work is to overcome and move beyond them. So my name is Luke Balcke, and all of my presence online is just my name. So social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, website, it's just Luke Balcke. If you type that in, you're going to find me. And then you can access me through any of those mediums and platforms. Email me directly. I work for people online all over the world, as well as I do in-person consultation on the Gold Coast. I do also past life regression therapy and energy healing like Reiki, which is sort of like a quantum style energy work. So yeah, people can get in contact. If there's nothing online that you see that's suitable, you can always reach out and message me directly, and we can work something out.
Amazing. And that was Luke Balcke, Balcke. We'll put the links in the show notes as well. So, once again, brother, thank you so much for the chat. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Paddy. Loved it, mate. Cheers.
Cheers. Much love. Thanks for listening to Leaders with Heart today. We appreciate you taking the time to tune in. And if you found value in today's episode, we would appreciate it massively if you shared this with a friend or a colleague. This is something that can massively benefit their day. And I also appreciate it so much because in the early days of building a podcast, anything like liking, subscribing, giving it a 5-star review, it all supports me spreading this message and mission of leading with heart with as many people as possible. So much gratitude to you for being here. And if you want to connect, I also love hearing from you. You can find mine and the guests' social media details in the show notes below. Mine are paddymac.truth on Instagram and Leaders with Heart on LinkedIn. The website leaderswithheart.com.au is another place you can find me. But until next time, have a beautiful day and sending you so much love.